And hello, everyone. I'm Daren, Jaime, and today is Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018. Of course, you're watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV set. Now, we want to tell you, our viewers, we want to welcome our viewers, particularly in Manhattan, on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is now being seen and broadcast live simultaneously on MNN's channel. And you can also stay connected to us via Twitter at BronxNet TV and Facebook at Open BronxNet Television. Well, kicking our show off, gun violence continues to plague the streets of our country. Statistics show every day 96 Americans are killed with guns. Here in the Bronx, there's an effort underway to keep our neighborhoods safer. Authorities are partnering with the community to try and get guns off the streets through the Bronx Gun Buyback program. These feature drop-off sites that are designed to exchange cash for guns or guns for cash, however you wish to put it. Here to share a little bit more about the program is Assemblyman Pichardo. We welcome you back, and good to have you.
Always a pleasure. How's it going?
Going good, going good. So obviously, as I said, you know, in the intro, 96 Americans every day are killed with guns. And when it comes to the issue of kids 0 to 19, those numbers continue to rise. And I know here in the borough, you know, a real focused intent. This isn't the first time we've done the gun buyback program, but let's talk about why you feel this program is important.
Well, I think taking at least one gun off the street can save countless lives. And, you know, giving a person an incentive to turn in a firearm, no questions asked, I think that's a great thing to do. Again, if the idea is to lessen the amount of firearms that are available on our streets and put them in a safe way where they're disabled and can't harm anybody, I think that's a win-win for everybody. And again, with the incentive as well to pay cash for these guns, I think it helps a person out if they're struggling or whatever. But the most important thing is to turn in these firearms, get them off our streets so they can't harm anybody either now or in the future.
So let's talk about the program as it is right now. People have the opportunity to turn guns in. How does it work?
So first of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank the District Attorney, Darcel Clark. I've been pestering her for quite some time to get this one in my district, so I want to take this opportunity to thank her. So basically, a person comes in. First of all, if they're transporting a firearm, make sure that it's in a safe position, that it's locked in their trunk. Basically, if you trade in an assault rifle or any operating handgun, you get about a $200 prepaid cash card. If you turn in any other type of firearm or weapon, you get a $25 gift card. But again, the firearm itself has to be in operable order. From my understanding, it doesn't have to have bullets, but preferably I believe that they shouldn't be having ammunition within the firearm. So bring in the firearm. If it's an operable order, they will disable it in front of NYPD, and they will get their cash card. But it's only up to 3 weapons that they'll get the money for. But if they want to turn in more the merrier.
How effective has this been? I mean, we've done this for years now across the borough. How do you measure its effectiveness?
Well, first and foremost, again, it comes down to the idea that we have to take any opportunity that we can take a gun off the street is a win, because ultimately we can't know for sure if that gun itself would have been used in the issue of the continuance of a crime for whatever reason, right? So it's hard to measure. So the idea that we take these firearms off the street, we're preventing tragedies like happened in my district a couple of weeks ago, where a man was shot on 183rd Street and University Avenue, a block away from a school, in front of his 2-year-old daughter. And that child's going to be scarred because someone had easy access to firearms. And I can guarantee you, Daren, that firearm was not purchased in the state of New York. That firearm was purchased somewhere in the South. And again, it just comes to this notion that it's so easy to access a firearm that it's just anything that we can do to take these war machines off our streets, I think, is a win for everybody.
So if somebody's out there watching, they have a relative with themselves, they have a firearm, they want to turn it in, they're concerned about possible prosecution, because we know what the state laws are when it comes to possession of a firearm. Talk a little bit about that.
So first of all, this is a no questions asked thing. You show up with a firearm, they disarm it, they give you your cash card, they don't look and they don't go through the background check of the firearm. They just, the idea is to get this firearm off the street, period. So if, like, let's say if you're living with someone that you know that has a firearm, you want to get rid of it, you can and get some money out of it. But the most important thing, again, is just getting that firearm off the street. So it's not used in the commission of the crime, or it's not used in the commission of actually ending someone's life or grievously injuring someone in any type of criminal process or whatever.
So where do people drop this off at, if they have?
Sure. So first of all, this event, I should led with this, is going to take place on October 13th, starting at 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. over at Holy Spirit Church in my district, which is 1940 University Avenue. It's basically right where Burnside Avenue and University Avenue meet, as Burnside Avenue is a dead end. It's the big church right there. Again, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., the 13th. Bring in the firearm, as long as it's in operable order, no questions asked. You'll get a cash card for it. And again, the most important thing is let's do everything that we can to get these firearms off the street, because unfortunately, the federal government is not doing what it's supposed to do in protecting our kids and protecting our community. So we have to figure out ingenious and inventive ways to actually do our federal legislators' jobs in getting these guns off the street.
Let me dial back a little bit on what you talked about the
Sure.
shooting a little while ago
Sure.
in your neighborhood.
Sure.
Give me a little bit about the community right now. What's the atmosphere? What's the temperature like given the shooting?
Well, look, myself and a lot of community organizations like BRAG and I am My Community and organizations that are anti-violence, we did a peace march in the district in one of the hottest areas, which is basically the 183rd Street corridor a couple of weeks ago. And again, people are just sick and tired of the violence that are happening in our communities. Look, you have to, and again, we have to look at gun violence as a public health issue. We have to look at poverty as a public health issue as well. And the thing is, these two things are interjected. So again, people want to live in peace, quiet, and decent neighborhoods. And the ability for folks to actually live or fulfill that dream to live in a community that's safe and they feel that's peaceful and they can raise their children in, the biggest factor in determining that is the amount and the presence of firearms that are in our communities.
How optimistic are you about the success of this program coming to your neighborhood?
Well, I'm very happy. Again, I think any gun, if you take one gun off the street, it's a success, it's a win. Again, we're preventing the potential future tragedies or crimes that are committed use of that firearm. And again, look, anything that we can do to help save a life and remove these firearms off our street, I think it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. So what have you heard from community residents with regards to the program? Has there been great support in terms of doing it?
I think, look, as I said, people want guns off the streets. Like every time I go to a rally, every time I go to a community board meeting, a precinct council meeting, there's quality of life issues, and then everybody talks about, I know that kid who's selling drugs on the corner, and I've seen them, with the dispute and firearm and all this other stuff, and we have to take these guns off the street. And people feel that anything their elected officials do, because again, we work for them and not the other way around. We have to figure out solutions to get guns off the streets, because unfortunately, on the federal level, they're either too scared, too inept, or too bought out by the NRA to actually do something tangible to help with the issue of gun violence, not only in my community, but in areas where there's been mass shooting events across the country.
Yeah, in a little while, you're getting ready to get back to Albany, take care of the people's business up at the state capitol.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about legislation for a moment surrounding gun violence. Are you satisfied with the current legislation? New York State does have strict handgun laws and gun legislation. What would you like to see added, or what can we do up there in terms of tightening the reins a little bit?
Well, I actually have a piece of legislation that I introduced a couple of years ago that basically says, and unfortunately my jurisdiction is limited, it basically says that if there's a firearm that is being used in the commission of a crime, the last owner on record is going to be held civilly liable for that crime. Unfortunately, because a lot of the guns that are used in the commission of a crime in my community and mostly in the state of New York are firearms that are purchased outside of the state of New York, which means it's outside of the jurisdiction of the state of New York. There's very little that the state of New York can do to prevent that. So I'm taking this opportunity on your program to ask any of my federal colleagues, I have the language, if you want to introduce a similar piece of legislation in the federal level, either in the House or in the Senate, just to make people responsible for their firearms and for their property. Because look, if you want to buy a firearm in Kentucky or in Florida or Virginia and you want to protect your family, that's your business. But what becomes my business is that if you buy a firearm and that firearm that you purchase in Virginia ends up in the streets of 183rd Street and University Avenue and it's used in the commission of a crime where a man is shot in front of his 2-year-old, there's something seriously wrong there, and we need to do everything that we can to prevent these things from happening.
Assemblyman Victor Pichardo, we're going to leave it right there. Thanks so much, and good to have you.
Always a pleasure.
All righty, Assemblyman Victor Pichardo, our guest. Listen, taking a quick break. We'll be back with more Open, including some Bronx updates and featuring some very special events.